So the age of mental fragmentation. So today I unsubscribed from a handful of emails, as in anytime that they came up, popped up on my phone, I clicked on it and hit unsubscribe. And it wasn't because it saved me hours or anything like that. Wasn't some revolutionary productivity hack or anything like that. I simply did it because it removed friction from my life. And it'd pop up and I'd hit unsubscribe. I was just done. Now I know one email doesn't matter, but 100 emails does. And one notification doesn't matter, but thousands in a year does matter. So while I was deleting all of these, I ended up starting to kind of think a little bit. Maybe we don't have an attention problem. Maybe we have a fragmentation problem, right? And so for me, I felt like maybe I'm not drowning in too much information. Maybe I'm just drowning in my attention getting fragmented across 100 different items that are going on in my life. Now, when I was younger, boredom was pretty normal, right? You drive in your car, wouldn't have a ton of stimulation, maybe the radio, and you could get somewhere without constantly being interrupted by all these notifications and calls and emails from all these people that are demanding your attention. You know, you actually had the opportunity to sit quietly with your thoughts and process the day and what you had going on. Now, today, many of us, out of just instinct, will reach for our phones, and it's not a criticism. I do it too. I'm, as guilty as anybody else. I think the question is like, what changed? Because something clearly did. Now, I think about how days usually begin, how my days begin, and possibly yours, but my phone's flooded with emails from just random stuff. And for years, I allowed this to happen, but you might have text messages. You have the emails. If you're on social media a lot, you'll have all the social media notifications unless you turn them off. And then you have work stuff and school stuff, and it all just keeps piling on top. And, the point is somebody wants something or some company wants your attention. And, after a while, it can just be really overwhelming. So, by breakfast time, my mind is already just fragmented into at least 20 different versions of things that I should be doing, but I just haven't made time for yet or can't get to, quick enough. And so for me, it ended up just being like, I'm just not getting enough done quickly enough. And so a few years ago, I would have been like, well, maybe there's a productivity app that I could download and it would help me manage all this. And then I just think, maybe it's not addition, maybe it's actually just subtraction, just take away things. And so that's what I implemented. And I know by breakfast time, it wasn't me being distracted by one large project. It was usually 100 small ones that had completely divided my attention. Now, I think that's one of the defining challenges in modern life. It's not information overload, it's more fragmentation. The constant breaking apart of attention that we just seem to have accepted into our life. The inability to stay with your thoughts for very long makes it really hard to focus. You can't process deeply. You can't understand and go deeper into a topic. And you can't connect it to something else, which is normally how stuff like thinking like it works like that. You connect it to other things that are going on in your life. So I started sketching what I call the fragmentation cycle. And so basically it looks something like this. You have your input, and then you have the interruption. And then you have attention residue left over from that interruption. And then that will go to mental noise. And then that mental noise will create decision fatigue. And that will give you a reduced capacity. So it's not like a birthday gift. You get actually reduced capacity cognitively. And then you have more consumption. And the cycle will just keep starting again and again. And so every interruption will create a residue, and then part of your attention will stay attached to the thing that you just left, right? Like you answer a text, You remember an email, you check a notification, you open an app again, you think about a task you forgot, you open another tab, and suddenly you have 10 unfinished thoughts and processes going on in the background of your mind that you're just not able to really focus on what needs to take place. So, I mean, I think this is one explanation on why people feel so mentally exhausted. Not because they're weak and certainly not because they're lazy, but they're just switching context so quickly throughout the day. They're constantly processing and constantly reacting, and every reaction carries a cost. Now, one cost is small, but 1,000 costs are not small. And so the hidden price isn't just productivity. That's what a lot of people focus on. It's like, okay, I'm just not being productive enough. I'm not getting enough done. But the real cost is your presence, right? And I've noticed this across my own life, is that I can be sitting with my kids, but your mind is somewhere else on another task. And you can be eating dinner, but thinking about work. You could be watching a movie, but you're scrolling on your phone. Am I right? You can be physically present, but mentally in another moment where you just never have fully arrived in your present life. And so fragmentation steals presence first, but that's not the only thing it steals. Now, productivity is just the symptom of what it takes, but fragmentation will also take your creativity, because most good ideas don't just arrive immediately, just off the cuff. They're like a great idea. Usually you have to spend time in an idea and actually play with it. And so they emerge when you've stayed with it for a while, with the question that's kind of ruminating around in your brain. Now, after you've wrestled with it, you've given your mind enough uninterrupted time. That's why a lot of great writers and business makers, they'll go to sleep and they'll come up with a solution to their problem that they had the day prior, because their brain had so much uninterrupted time to kind of work on a solution. And so modern life doesn't encourage that. It rewards reaction and not reflection. So with that being said, I think this is where most productivity advice gets it wrong. Because usually the answer is always add a app, right? A new planner, a new system, a new application, a new framework, a new course. But I just think, going back to what I said earlier, what if it's not addition? What if it's actually subtraction? That is what we need to focus on. And so the reason I unsubscribed from all those emails wasn't because I think email is evil. It just, for me, it represented a future interruption, right? A demand on my attention. And I wasn't just deleting the emails, I was deleting the friction moving forward in my life that I just knew wasn't going to keep serving me. And so I think that's an important distinction to kind of take into it. And so maybe clarity isn't created by adding more. Maybe it's created by removing things that really never deserved your attention to begin with. One notification and one subscription at a time. Like, I look at it like you have one open loop, you close it, and you do one source of friction at a time. Now, the age of mental fragmentation isn't defined by one major distraction. It's defined by thousands of small interruptions that are all competing for your attention every day. And so we've become obsessed with finding a better system. And I think maybe the better question might be, going through your day, like, what could I remove? Because the quality of your attention shapes the quality of your decision making, and the quality of your decisions shapes the quality of your life. Now, before you leave, I would just challenge you to do one thing. All right, just try to remove one source of friction from your life this week. Just one subscription, one open loop, a notification, a series of emails you're just tired of getting. One thing that keeps demanding your attention that adds zero value to the board. And then pay attention to what actually changes. It might surprise you. I know it surprised me. My notifications were surprisingly quieter after I just unsubscribed from like maybe 10 emails. And so you might just find that it's not just your productivity that gets better, but maybe your clarity, how you think and go about your day. And so if this idea resonated with you, because I know it was on my brain for a little while, I've got a lot more questions about how people think and work and how we kind of work through cognition and thinking. And I think these questions might be worth exploring together. So with that being said, thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you on the next one.